Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be doing if I could only keep one palette from each brand that I do have, which palette would I keep? So I have a pile of palettes here. There's about 25 palettes to share with you guys, and I'm only counting the ones that I have at least 2 palettes of. So there's more brands in my collection. I just have 25 or so that I have 2 palettes from the brand. So if you want to know what palettes I'd pick, definitely continue watching. Also, if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. I upload 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. And let's just go ahead and jump right in. So I'm not sure who the original creator was because I've seen a few people mention these videos. It's been about a month or so, but the person that I saw do this video idea was Batty Bean. So I will link her video down below so you guys can check her out. Let me know if you guys want me to do, I was kind of thinking about filming it after this video, but if I had to declutter a palette from my collection, I recently did a declutter like 3 months or so ago for palettes, but if I had to declutter a palette from each brand of my collection, which palette would be? Let me know if you guys want me to do the opposite of what I'm doing now. So the first palette I'm going to share with you guys, or the first brand, is going to be from Dose of Colors, and I do have 2 palettes from Dose of Colors. This one is the Cutting Edge palette that I decided I would keep if I could only keep one from a brand. I feel like this color story is really nice and it's very different. Yeah, I don't think I have very many palettes that I picked out with this color story, so that's the reason why I decided to pick this one. So since I only have 2, the other one will have to be decluttered, but I like how pigmented the formula is, but it is on the powdery side and I don't really like powdery eyeshadows. I want to use my kickback, but when it creates more kickback, it's kind of annoying to be honest, but this is the palette I picked from Dose of Colors. I just realized I have 3 from Dose of Colors. I still stand by this decision. Next up is NARS. The palette I would keep is the Climax eyeshadow palette. I did rank this in a ranking eyeshadow video, and I wasn't as impressed with it, but I'm more impressed with this palette than the other one that I do have. The other one is missing like a deepening shade, and I don't know, I like to have like those deepening shades in the palettes that I'm using, so that's the reason why I went with this. The shimmers are nice, the mattes blend really nicely as well. I just feel like I needed more from this palette, but again, I only have 2 NARS palettes and this is the one that I would keep. Next up is Nomad Cosmetics, and this one was a no-brainer. When I saw Melt, I was like, yep, this one. This is the Muerte palette. This is the one that got away for very many people, and I would definitely keep this. If I could only keep one palette, it would definitely be this one. I kind of looked at the Mariposa palette as well, but I was like, no girl, you gotta go with Muerte because everybody's still looking for this, hoping it's gonna come back, and I was able to snag it up. I do have Vida, and I've debated on decluttering that one, but I just keep it to keep the whole packaging together and stuff. But Muerte for sure is the one I would keep if I could only keep one from Melt Cosmetics. I really like the formula on this. It's pretty pigmented. Definitely need to reach for this a little bit more. Yeah, definitely keeping that. Next up was Urban Decay, and I only have 2 palettes in my collection from Urban Decay, and this one was definitely like kind of a no-brainer. I picked the Stone Vibes palette. I picked this one because I love the shimmers in here. They're really reflective and super pretty, and if you've tried this palette, you know what I'm talking about. The mattes are definitely on the drier side, but the shimmers is definitely what steals the show in this palette. I think they're very beautiful. I've always gotten compliments when I wear this palette. The shimmers are, again, super pretty and really reflective and really nice. So definitely went with Stone Vibes. Nomad Cosmetics. I was trying to think. I have 2 palettes from Nomad. Yeah. I would pick the Harajuku palette, which this is the Tokyo palette. I also have the It's Europe or Haunted Europe one. That one's nice. I don't know. I just went with this because this is fun. I was going to say funner, but I don't think that's a word. I just feel like the color story in this is much funner. I keep wanting to say funner. I don't know. It's nice and pastel-y and perfect for springtime. I do wish that it had more mattes than these like satiny shades, but overall I'm really impressed also with this palette. I really love the shimmer shades in here. They're really reflective as well. And again, from this one and the Haunted Europe, I feel like I would go with this just because I don't have very many other pastel palettes I picked out from other brands. And I was impressed with this palette, and I think it's really nice and perfect for springtime, so definitely went with that. Next up, Beauty Bay. I picked the Age of Opulence palette. I really love how like smoky and jewel tone and grungy this palette is. I also have the Wilderness palette and also have the Made by Mitchell palette. And from the three, I decided to go with this just because I feel like my eyes just go towards all of the shades. I would use all of the shades in here. And I was just very impressed when I used this palette. The shimmers are really buttery. The mattes, I do feel like I need to blend a little bit more and actually need to use this palette more because I think I only used it a handful of times, but I love the color story and the looks I created when I did use this palette were super beautiful, very affordable. I was going back and forth between this and the Made by Mitchell one, which I still kind of am, but the color story on this, like I love all the shades in here, whereas the Made by Mitchell, there was a few that I was like, they're okay. I felt like there was more reds than anything. I don't know, that was just what my eyes were looking at. And then with this, I know I have like blues and purples and pinks, and I don't know, I just gravitated more toward this color story. Next up is Menagerie Cosmetics, and I went with the Pharaoh palette. I only have 2 palettes from Menagerie, and this is the color story here. They have a really amazing formula. It's very pigmented and buttery. But yeah, this color story is pretty unique, and I can create green looks. Like there's neutral looks as well, pops of color. It's a really great formula. If you haven't tried Menagerie Cosmetics, I definitely suggest you do. Next up is Sydney Grace, and this one was a no-brainer. It's definitely my Tiny Marvels palette, and this was a collab with Mel Thompson. It's very neutral with a few pops of colors here and there. Definitely want to remember her with this palette, and I definitely wanted to pick this one for sure again. It was a no-brainer. Definitely wanted to pick it. The formula is nice, shimmers and matte formula. Really, really good. You won't be disappointed with the Sydney Grace formula, so that is why I picked this one. And also in memory of Mel, like I just had to pick that one. Next up is the Odins Eye brand, and I decided to go with the Hella palette. I have 3 from Odins Eye, and this was my pick from the 3. I really love the It's Judy palette as well. I don't know, I'm kind of thinking I know which one I'm going to be decluttering if I had to do a video for that in my video, you know, decluttering, or had to let go of. This is the color story for the Hella palette. This is in collab with Angelica Nevequist. I'm not sure how to say her name, but it's just really beautiful. I love the greens and yellow looks I created. There's pinks and purpley looks. Like, it's such a really beautiful palette. The color story is super unique, and then again the pigment's really, really nice on this as well. Like, this was also kind of a no-brainer looking at all the other 2 palettes I had. I just think it's really, really nice. Next up, I have BH Cosmetics, and for this one, this was also a no-brainer. The BH, you're pretty much picking like your favorite palettes from each brand. Well, with some of them, because some of them is just like, oh, like I'll prefer this color story instead. But this one is the Blueberry Muffin palette. I love this palette. It's like a cool toned, blue toned, sweet dream. I just love every look I've created with this. This one looks like a brown, but it's more purpley on the eyes, and it's just very, very nice. This pigment is super nice. I hope they come out with more palettes. I don't know, they did go bankruptcy, but I don't think they did it to like close. Maybe they just bankrupt and sold, so we'll see what else they come out with. But this is a really good formula, and more on the regular size palette as well. I have bigger palettes, but this one for sure was the one that I just had to pick if I could only keep one from BH. Next up is Sigma. I only have 2, and I went with the Cinderella palette because of the collab and the color story as well. It's like a jewel toned dream-ish, for me anyways. This is the color story. Whoops. Very pigmented. The only shades I didn't really like were like the matte purples over here. I just felt like they were more on the drier side, but everything else in here was pretty pigmented as well. I love the color story of the jewel tone shades in here. Again, a lot of these palettes are going to be like your favorites from the brand. If you could only keep one, of course, like you're not going to keep one that you don't really like, you know what I mean? The other one that I have is the Untamed. No, I had the Untamed. I actually got rid of that. Magnifique, I think, and that one's actually really nice, which maybe I could have gone with Magnifique because that one's actually really nice color story. I like how small and compact it is for traveling, and I would use every single shade in there. I don't know, I just went with Cinderella because of the collab, and yeah, I kept that. Next up, I have Jules Place, and I went with the Nomad palette. I think it's fun for fall time. Like you get those pops of orange and yellow, and then this really pretty cool like mossy green kind of color, and then you have the green and you have a gray and a dark brown. Like it's really fun for fall. So I only have 2 from Juvia's. I used to have like 5, but again I only have 2, so this was my pick. Okay, Give Me Glow Cosmetics is my next brand, and I went with the Bad Witch Club palette. I have 3 from Give Me Glow. This is a color story. I think it's super fun. I did mention in a palette ranking, I ranked it kind of lower in my ranking just because the shimmers in here are more on the darker side, but overall I still really enjoy this palette. I just wish it had like lighter colorful shades in here, but I really like the tones. I feel like all these tones go together, and again, that's the only flaw I saw really, was that the shimmers were on the darker side, but overall I still really like this palette and I wouldn't declutter it anytime soon. Yeah, I wouldn't declutter that. Okay, next up I have here is Lime Crime, and I only have 2 from Lime Crime, and the one I went with I recently used, which is the Greatest Hits Bangers palette. At first I didn't love the color story in here, and once I actually got to play around with it, you can actually create so many really beautiful looks, spring looks. I just really was impressed with this palette. I was thinking about decluttering it not too long ago because I just feel like I didn't reach for it, but I actually was very impressed. Again, I used it recently and I really enjoyed it. It's pretty, the bands are really pigmented. There was a few shimmers in here that weren't like super reflective, but there were a few that were. But yeah, I really enjoyed this palette, and I guess I'll have to declutter the other one even though I really liked it. I just went with this because I had more selection of looks that I can create with this palette. Vizier is my next palette, and for Vizier I ended up picking the Neutral Matte Milieu palette. I have 4, and right now I have 1 in my current Shop My Stash. But I've only used it a couple times and I'm actually really impressed with it, but I decided to go with this one because this one is also one that is like my color story. I really enjoy this pigment, and Vizier is really, really good. If you haven't tried them out, you definitely should. They are on the pricier side, but it's definitely worth it, and I can tell a difference in their quality compared to other brands. But yeah, I went with this one just because I feel like it's a good everyday palette color story, so definitely love that. Oh my gosh, Natasha Denona is next, and I wanted to go with my big palette, and I'm like, yes, okay, the formula on that is really nice, but I don't reach for it. But every time I have used it, I'm impressed, and I feel like there's no, like the other formulas, other palettes she has, it doesn't compare to the 28 pan palettes. But I decided to go with this one. It's technically the gold palette, but mine's like a remix version because it has cranberry palette in it as well. So of course this would be like my, if I could only keep one from a brand, because this is like, I'm trying to think of the word. I made this palette for me and what I wanted. I took out some of the golds and like a bronze color because I don't really reach for those shades. I feel like there was a lot of repeat browns in here, so I took that one and put this like burgundy shade in here, so definitely would keep this one for sure. I feel like this one has a little bit of hard pan. This one these 4 shades came from the cranberry palette. Yeah, I already got rid of the other shades from the gold palette, so I can't really replace them anymore. But overall, yeah, this is the one I went with. I also really like, I think I have like 5 palettes. I also really like the bronze palette. I have the Trio Chrome palette, and I also have the face palette in dark. Those ones are so good, but I just had to go with the gold palette. Next up is Jeffree Star Cosmetics. I know he's controversial. I haven't purchased from his brand in a while. I don't know, I keep being iffy about purchasing from him, but I do have these palettes and I do like them, so I decided to include them in this video. So this is the one that I went with, also controversial, is the collab with Shane Dawson, the Conspiracy palette. I wish the packaging wasn't bulky, but overall I'm looking at the color story and the pigment, and I really like this color story. I wish he would have came out with the thinner packaging for this palette because this is bulky. Like, I'm not gonna travel with this, and I never have traveled with this. I don't really reach for it just because it's bulky, and yeah, I could depot it, but I don't want to. I want to keep the original packaging. So anyways, I love the color story in here. So I was kind of leaning towards Jawbreaker because that's one of the 3 that I have as well. But then when I opened this, I'm like, no, I like really love this color story because it has the neutrals and also those fun pops of colors in here. But I just wish the packaging was like Jawbreaker, you know? So I went with Conspiracy. for ABH, I thought I was gonna go with Sultry palette, but then I forgot I had this and I was like, no, you gotta pick this one. So I went with the Primrose palette by ABH. This formula is very, very nice. This, again, if you can't tell yet, these are my kinds of tones. Like, I love these kinds of colors, and it's so pigmented. The shimmers are so reflective as well. I was very impressed with this palette, and any of you that don't have this palette, you need to pick this up because it's really, really good. I saw my friend declutter it or sell it on our Poshmark, or is selling it, and I'm wondering why. Maybe I should reach out and ask her why she's decluttering it, because it's really, really good. I'm surprised she had it on her Poshmark. I don't think she even used it either. Okay, next up, Huda Beauty. So I went with the Rose Quartz palette. This is like a beautiful pinky, cool toned dream as well. The shimmers are also very reflective, and it's very unique as well from everything else I've picked around here. So I think it's really, really nice. I got this for Christmas as a gift, so I'm really happy I got it. This is it, and the shimmers are super nice and pigmented. The mattes are as well. I really enjoy it. Next up is Collidos, and this one was quick and easy when I opened it up. Club Nebula would be my pick. I have quite a few. I probably have about 8 palettes from Collidos. This color story is nice, jewel tones. The shimmers are amazing, like very, very nice. I feel like Primrose is kind of similar to Collidos, like the shimmers in here. They're really, really nice. And again, I haven't had any issues with the pigment on this. Now that I'm thinking about it, Angelica did this is Angelica's collab as well. Angelica's collab with Collidos, and then her collab with Odins Eye made my if I could only keep one from each brand. Hey, good job, Angelica. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you come out with, because I'll most likely be picking it up. But again, pigment is there, and Collidos is actually a really good formula, so try them out. Okay, I have Colourpop. Colourpop, I have at least 10 palettes, and this is the one that I just said, you're gonna have to keep her. So it's the Plush Like Me palette. Again, another palette that I had to go for shades that are me and really enjoy. I was kind of debating between this, Limoncello, and Lush Life. And I was like, well, I think I like this one better than Limoncello. So I put Limoncello away, and then I opened up Lush Life and this one just speaks to me. I can use it every single day. Lush Life, I probably could have gone with it, but I feel like I like this one more than Lush Life. I really like Lush Life, but again, I just went with this. I just love like these tones. They're like burgundy but grungy, like everyday but grungy. I don't know. I was very impressed with this palette. It was also gifted to me for Christmas, and I'm happy I have it. I just like color but muted. I don't know. It's really, really nice. I really like it. Okay, Lunar Beauty. I went with the Moonspell palette. I had 3. I had decluttered 1, so I only had 2 left. So I went with this one, another one that people are wishing came back. If I do the other video of if I had to declutter a palette, the other one is also really nice. I kept going back and forth, but I like the pigment. Lunar Beauty has a really good formula, and I love the color story in here. I feel like I would use every single shade in here, and the one that I was comparing it to was the Lunar Eclipse, which is also really nice. I would use this palette more than the other one, so that's the reason why I went with this. But this one was pretty hard because, especially when you only have 2 and you like both of the palettes, it's kind of hard to pick from both. But when you have like 10 palettes, you're like, okay, I know which one I like. Pat McGrath. I picked 3 palettes from Pat McGrath, not just 1, because I was like, how can I pick just 1? Which I guess I should, because what I did was I picked 1 from the Mega palettes, 1 from the 10 pan palettes, and then 1 from the 6 pan palettes. So they're all like different. Am I cheating? Probably, but let me share with you guys. So for the 6 pan, I went with the Bridgerton just because of the collab, and I just really like the packaging and collab. I only have 2 of the 6 pans, so I just went with my favorite packaging. The color story could have been a little better. I do wish this would have had the yellow that the second palette is coming out with, but it's okay. Yeah, overall, that's the reason why I picked this one. And then the 10 pan, I went with this one. I was going back and forth between this one and Midnight Sun, but I just had to pick this because look how fun the packaging is. And even the color story in here is also super fun. I really like the shimmers in here. Look how like fun that is. Very happy palette. The other one, the Midnight Sun, I really enjoy as well, but I feel like that one's more for everyday use, whereas this one's again more fun. I just wanted something fun, and again the packaging on this palette makes me happy, so that is the reason why I picked this one. And then lastly, the Mega palettes. So I have both of the Mega palettes and definitely went with this one. I was just very impressed with this. I could have gone with the other one, but it's more, I don't know, the color story's more out there, but this one's again good for every day. I can do a smoky look for date night or like parties or anything like that. Every single day looks with this palette. That's the reason why I picked this one. I don't really reach for the first one, but it's really, really nice. I don't think I would declutter it. I think I already know which Pat McGrath palette I would declutter. I wonder if I'd have to pick like one of each category, which I guess is fine. I already know. I just recently decluttered, so a lot of the palettes I have, I actually really like. Okay, so the last three brands I have here, I have one in my collection and then the other one's in my new palette drawer. So this is more gonna be versus like the ones I've used versus Color Story. So the first one that I've used that I picked next is from Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and it's this Surge palette. I also have the Dollhouse palette, and I opened both up, and I definitely just, I'm like, if I could only keep one, I would definitely pick this one. This one's just fun. Pastels, mid-tone shades, deep shades, shimmers, and like bright neon shades. Definitely had to go with this. The other one's really pretty as well, but like comparing both of them to see which one I would keep, like this one was kind of like, okay, yes, like you just gotta keep this one. I really like how deep these shades are. A lot of the deep shades in the Dollhouse look super similar. I have yet to use that palette, but I just went with this because I know like each shade in here is super different and they don't like look alike, so that's the reason why I picked that one. And then next up is the Unearthly Cosmetics, which is also Alien Cosmetics. I only have two palettes from them, but I decided to, if I could only keep one, I went with my new palette. I've used the other one I have, and I don't know, I'm just basing it off of Color Story right now because I haven't used this one, but look how beautiful this is. This is really big as well. Like it's as big as my head, and I have yet to use this palette, but again, I'm just picking it for Color Story. There's like dual chromes in here as well, I believe. And I don't know, the other one that I have is the Not Normal palette, which was okay. The Color Story was okay. The formula wasn't bad, but again, I'm just going based off of Color Story, and yeah, that's the reason why I picked this one. Okay, got one more to share with you guys. Ace Beauty. I've tried a few of their palettes. I only have one in my collection, and this one is new that I have yet to try, and I decided to keep my new one, which is Tropical Vibes palette, just because of the Color Story again. I also have the Oceanic palette, which actually that one's really good, but I don't know. I just decided to pick this like grungy, mossy goodness right here, so I'm basing it off of Color Story on this one as well. I don't have any issues with the Oceanic palette, but I did have the Paradise Fallen, the cool tone purple palette, and the dark purple was really patchy, so I'm hoping this one is fine. And I also went with this because I like the Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette, and I don't think, besides actually the Dose of Colors Cutting Edge palette, but I don't think I have very many other like grungy greens that I ended up picking out, so I actually needed more like cool tone shades because I don't have very many cool tones in here. So it's a lot of color and neutral shades. So those are all the palettes I picked out for if I could only keep one palette from each brand that I have two or more palettes of. Yeah, these are my picks. I'll be happy if these were the only palettes I had. I definitely have over like 120 palettes. I'm assuming I definitely do. And what if I kept like 25 palettes right here, I would be very happy with my collection. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've done this video. A lot of people were doing this like a month ago. Anyways, these palettes would be my picks if I could only keep one from each brand. Let me know if you agree with me with any of these brands. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!